He is a multilingual operations leader and consultant with continual achievements in improving profitability, productivity, cycle time, and quality for companies manufacturing products and providing services to the other businesses. He is an authority in Six Sigma and Lean Enterprise. He has conceived, orchestrated, and led turnarounds of safety performance in multiple facilities for several companies. Has extensive international experience leading and supporting factories and managing supply chains. He is fluent in Spanish and Portuguese and is a native English speaker. Most of his career was in the energy industry, working for companies like GE and Westinghouse. He's also got experience in leadership positions in a tractor company and an insurance company, along with consulting experience in many other industries. He is a mechanical engineer with a bachelor's degree from Northwestern, a top American university, as well as an MBA from Duke University in North Carolina. Also, he has helped many people to find jobs since 2008, both as a volunteer and a paid job search coach. Currently, he serves as a volunteer with Veterati, a non-profit organizations that help military personnel and their spouses to find work after their military service. A topic that we're gonna discuss a lot today. Speaking from Georgia, I'm so happy to announce you guys that our guest today is Dave Boss. And like I said at the very beginning, Dave is fluent in Portuguese. So, Dave, seja muito bem-vindo ao Carreira Talks e muito obrigado por participar.
Obrigado por o convite. E sei o inglês é muito bom. Parabéns. Estou muito feliz de ter essa oportunidade de conversar com o seu público sobre a minha carreira e, além disso, sobre conselho para encontrar emprego. Meus métodos eu usei com vários brasileiros e muitos americanos e pessoas em os países de América do Sul que falam espanhol. Então, eu acho que a maioria dos conceitos são aplicáveis em quase todo mundo.
Muito obrigado, o prazer é nosso, obrigado pelas palavras. De fato, vai ser muito legal. Aí, turma, a gente bateu um papo aqui antes, né, da gente gravar nas últimas semanas aí, e as ideias aqui, as experiências do Dave são muito legais, não tenho dúvidas que vai ser muito rico para todos vocês aí que estão nos acompanhando. Well, let's do this talk in English, and if we have some kind of language trouble, we appeal to the Portuguese, okay?
Okay, sounds good.
Okay. So guys, before we jump in, just to reinforce the objective of the Journey series. The aim of the series is to share the journey of great market leaders and share the big decisions, main learnings and insights in career management, and advice for those who are just starting their careers. And today, especially, we will go through on the job searching topic, where Dave will share some great insights and strategies for you develop your own career. So Dave, let's start. Please share with us your own journey, your career. How did you get here?
Oh, okay. So I've been in business for next year, it'll be 40 years, 40 años. And at that time, there was an expectation that someone would go to work for a company right after completing college, university, and stay at that company for their whole career. Today, of course, that's not the case, at least in the United States. Someone that's just starting out after college could probably expect to have 12 to 15 jobs during a career of 40 years. So the strategy of planning your career is much different today than when I started. For my first company, I worked 17 years, Westinghouse, and I was in marketing and sales back in those days. And I learned a lot about technical issues as well. So the next company I went to was GE, which at the time was probably the most valuable company in the world. Since then, it's really fallen compared to other companies. But during that time, I went back to college and got my MBA to be more qualified to lead a business, and moved into the operations area away from marketing and sales. Since then, I left GE after another 9 years, I think. I've had a series of jobs, sometimes consulting, sometimes roles inside of companies. But it's actually been a fairly difficult period because of a major recession that we had right after we left GE in the United States. But with these different changes, I've learned my current consulting skills by being forced into various situations. Some of these jobs I left, others the companies reorganized due to the economy, and my jobs were eliminated. But I've been very happy to have all that experience in all these different companies because it makes me a better consultant today.
Great. Let me make you a question. I'm gonna ask you this late on our interview, but you said that you spent a lot of years on a few companies, and today is that our young professionals have a different approach of the career. Do you have some, today there is some a average time that you spent that's in each company or in each positions, when is the right moment to move on the company or on the position? How can you help?
Well, I don't think there's a requirement to move on quickly. I mean, if the person enjoys the company and they're doing well and the company enjoys having them, they shouldn't be looking to leave every 3 years. But I think today, because the way technology changes in many different job areas, if somebody's in a company for more than about 5 years, maybe they should start looking around, because when I was coming through, if somebody kept moving every 5 years, it looked like they weren't a very stable employee. But today, if somebody's in a company for 5 or 10 years, people look at it and say, well, are their skills up to date? Have they done anything challenging? Have they been in a routine for all this time? And so, especially for younger people, when you're inside a company, even today, your salary increases are smaller. Your opportunities for promotion are smaller. So somebody that stays in one company versus moving to others by the time, let's say, they're 30 years old, the person that successfully moves in a planned way probably has a higher rank, a higher title, and is making more money. So I would certainly say that to have the nice blend between stability and continually facing new challenges, I'd like to see somebody move, say, every 3 to 4 years. But I think a young person, even if they're already in the workforce, it's never too late to write out a plan of what your objective is for the highest job that you want. And what are you going to do between now and then to try to achieve that job?
Yeah.
And that might involve changing your jobs, changing your companies several times.
Yeah. Great. Let me ask you about your journey. Along your journey, there is a specific job or activity or projects that you learn the most?
Yes, very much. The one that comes to mind, my first real role in operations, I was a plant manager for GE here in Atlanta for 4 years. And it was great because it gave me the opportunity to have profit and loss responsibility. So the success of the business rested on my abilities and the abilities of the people that worked for me. And it was really the best of both worlds because it was like a small business, $30 million US dollars in revenue, which is about 160 million reais each year. So it was small where I got a lot of authority, but it was part of GE, a multi-billion-dollar company. So we had all the resources we needed to be successful. But there I learned a lot about dealing with people, how to motivate and lead people rather than command them to do things. I learned how to make money, how to price our products and services, how to look for efficiency among the workforce. So it was a very rewarding, exciting job, and I learned probably the most in that 4 years.
Yeah, great. And let's talk about now about studies. How did you choose your studies, your courses, your degree courses? There is on your family, your parents, your environment, people on your environment actually studied the same things. How this did works for you?
Well, when I was finishing high school, I had interest in 3 different areas. Music, I was a trumpet player.
Oh, wow.
Journalism, I was a writer. And engineering, because I always liked math and science. So along with my family's very, very different areas, but the college that I went to, Northwestern University, had really excellent programs in all those areas. And so I really didn't know exactly what I wanted to do until I arrived at the university. And I started off in a field called biomedical engineering, where I thought I was going to be designing artificial limbs and hearts and things like that. But in those days, it was a new field. And in order to get a good job, you'd have to get a master's degree immediately following college. I didn't want to do that. So I switched to mechanical engineering because that degree is applicable in a wide variety of types of jobs. And it still is, such as factory engineering, industrial engineering, production engineering, quality, it just goes on and on. And that degree has served me really well. Then later, when it was time to decide on getting another degree, at the end of my time at Westinghouse and when I was moving over to GE, I decided that all of my qualifications were for sales and marketing and commercial jobs, but I was really more interested in manufacturing and service and operations. But by that point, I had been promoted a number of times in the sales and marketing space, and I didn't have the qualifications for a parallel job in operations. So I felt like going back to school and getting my degree, an MBA degree, would give me some of that experience. And I was right. After I graduated, a few years later, I was given my first leadership role in operations. And the nice thing at that time was my company, GE, paid the whole cost of going to this very expensive college, and they gave me time during the day to be able to study. So it was very, very nice.
Great. And let me ask you about on this type of perspective of your career. First, on decide the degree. It's a new field, like you said, but the other ones can provide me such a diverse activities to work. And later on, MBA. Do you have some kind of mentors or coaches that following you, that help you to make these decisions, to make a clear perspective of your own career?
Well, probably the first and most important mentor was my father, because when he was looking at my interests of music, journalism, and engineering, all he could see was that engineering was going to be a very stable career and making more money. Music is a very difficult field to be successful, and also, even in those days, we still had a lot of newspapers, so there was jobs in journalism, but they weren't very well paying and not as stable. Later, when I chose to get my MBA, I talked with my manager at work. Usually I've been fortunate to have managers that were very supportive of promotions, development, cross-training opportunities, and education. And I came up with the possibilities of what I wanted to do, and then I would discuss the positives and negatives of the type of degree, as well as which institutions would be best for me.
Great. It's important for everyone have this kind of self-reflection, of self. It's a time to reflect how things going on, and where you can be to make this kind of decisions. And
well, I think for a young person, a lot of them are scared, fearful, tem medo, of asking someone to be their mentor. And I think for at least the first 8 or 10 years of someone's career, it would be very handy to have somebody more experienced that they can trust and that's thoughtful, that they can check their ideas, both about their job changes, their development, and situations that might arise at work. And most business leaders are willing, without charging, to be a mentor for maybe 1 or 2 young professionals at a time. But I'd highly recommend that if the company doesn't provide a mentor to somebody just starting out, or even somebody in a job search, they ought to find somebody more experienced, especially in the area that they want to work, and develop a relationship so that they could be a resource as well.
Yeah, so much important. Let me ask about you about decisions. What's your biggest career decision that you have ever made? How was the analysis and the decision-making process? How did you make this decision?
Wow. So I think probably it was my most recent career decision at the beginning of 2018 to become an independent management consultant. Now, I had done consulting several times in the past, but now I decided that this is what I want to do for the rest of my career. And I hope to work about another 10 years. But that means that not only am I responsible to do the work, but it's like being in a continual job search. You have to go out and find projects to work on before you can work on them. And then when you're working on those projects, you have to dedicate some time to get the next projects. So when this project ends, you've got more projects to do. And what I learned from my previous consulting experience was that what we call cold calling, making telephone calls or emails to people that you don't know to look for projects, doesn't work very well. So I invested a lot of money in a company to help me to teach me how to do that and use their system so that I would be able to continually have opportunities to have projects. And I started, although I've been doing this work now, again, since the beginning of 2018, I started that marketing campaign maybe 6 months ago, and I'm very happy with the results. I have a lot of phone calls every week, have come up with opportunities, but I needed to invest because even with all my experience, I don't know everything, and you have to recognize what your weaknesses are and try to bolster them. And in this case, there was a company available that charged me to do that.
Yeah, a lot of hard decisions. Well, let's jump in on the main topic of job searching. Please share with us the main elements or steps on the job searching. Tell us more about your methods or how you see this topic.
So I see two things that are common to both the United States and Brazil for 98% of job seekers. They do something that I call click and pray. This is the mouse from my computer. And so what they do is they go to LinkedIn, they go to different job sites, and they click on the application, and then they pray that somebody's going to look at their resume. The other approach that they might use is they might post on LinkedIn or Twitter, hey, I need a new job. Anybody, do you know of jobs for me? Neither of those approaches usually works, especially now. Before the coronavirus in the United States, our unemployment level was below 3%. Now it's about 15%. But even before coronavirus, if there was a job posting, the company would get 500 or 1,000 applications. Now, with unemployment so high, they may get 1,500 or 2,000 applications. And so people are very focused on making sure their resume is perfect and that they're going to get called for the job. But many people need jobs and only one person is going to get it. So what I recommend is several things. One is to really have a strong LinkedIn profile, because 95% of recruiters use LinkedIn to at least identify candidates. But it's not enough to have a strong profile. In order to be found, you also have to be active on LinkedIn every day. You have to have a lot of connections so that every time you post something, many people in your network see about you, and many people in their networks also see about you. Many people don't read what you post, but that's why your LinkedIn profile has to be very strong, so as that information comes by when they're reading LinkedIn, they see every day, Victor, continuous improvement, Victor, continuous improvement. And then you start to become known, and when somebody looks for that title, your name will come up. Another thing that people tend not to do is very specific networking. And this is probably the key to the whole method that I recommend. That's rather than looking at the job boards for what jobs are posted, don't do that, because it's too late. There's going to be 2,000 applications for each of those jobs. It'd be better to identify the companies where you want to work, especially if they don't have jobs posted, then identify the people inside the company that you'd like to work for. And then figure out a way to get in touch with them when there's no job posted, simply to get advice. Not to say, do you know of any jobs? I need a job. It's to build relationships. And it's like making a friend. You're not good friends after your first encounter. In order to build a friendship, you have to have different interactions with the person over a period of time. And I recommend that a person start out with a list of 10 companies where they think their skills would be needed, and identify people in those companies through LinkedIn that they'd like to talk to. And then when they run out of 10 companies, then come up with another 10 and another 10. And then every day you'll have things to do, like sending emails to those people, preparing for calls, writing thank you notes for those calls. And so every day, instead of wondering, what am I going to do to find a job today? There's always something to do when you've put in place a system like that. And I think another thing that people put too much emphasis on is making their resume perfect. The resume has to be strong. The resume has to be good. But get some advice if you don't know how to write one. Follow the advice and put that aside. There are many people that feel like, I didn't get this job, so I need to change the resume or put these keywords in there. It really doesn't matter. What matters is getting an advantage over the rest of your competition by knowing people inside the companies, so that when they need someone like you, Victor is the first person that they think about. And maybe they have to interview 5 or 6 people, but they don't have to post it on the job boards. And wouldn't it be nice if that person is making sure that you're one of the 5 people that he's going to interview?
Great. Awesome point of view. I have some questions to make for you, but my first one, most of our audience are interns, young students. Do you have some tips for those kind of professional that with a little experience, or sometimes with no experience at all, how can this professional can make or can build a strong LinkedIn profile?
So I'm sure the situation is similar in your country, but it's very difficult for young people without experience and old people with a lot of experience to find jobs. And so I think it's a waste of time to apply for a job that says you need 2 years of experience if you have none. Because there's going to be, especially with how high unemployment is in Brazil right now, there's going to be many people who have the experience and more that are going to be your competition. So the best way is the same way that I just mentioned. And it's even easier for a young person, because when they call somebody in that company, they're not asking for a job. They're saying, I'm a young person, I'm graduating from the university soon. I saw your profile on LinkedIn. I'm not asking you for a job. What I'm asking you for is your advice about what I can do to make myself as qualified as possible for the next job. And again, do that with many companies. And when it's time for somebody to put that person in place, they're going to think of you, because most people don't do that. And I think it's easier for a young person to get those kinds of meetings and appointments, because I can't speak for Brazilians, but here, most people like to give advice, like to give their opinions. I'm sure it's the same for executives in Brazil.
People like to help more than we could imagine. And
the problem becomes if the person that you ask doesn't know of a job for you, then it's very easy for them to say, sorry, Victor, I don't have a job for you. There's no reason for us to talk. But if you're asking for advice and not asking for a job, and you come to the conversation with intelligent questions that you've researched, and the person can see that you're a smart person that's thought a lot about this, maybe in a few weeks or a few months, they'll think about you when it's time to put somebody in that position.
Yeah. I see this like a sales process, like a funnel. You have a lot of prospects that you could send a message to buy your product. You have a lot of professionals that you can send you a message on LinkedIn or even the connection invite for make the questions to the invitation to have this conversation about advices and questions in general. There is a strategy that I usually to use also on this process, that one of my questions, I have the same process that you speak on my last years of as a professional, and I can say that's a great strategy. And like you said, in good words, the job post, it's too late because the HR manager or the HR analyst who are taking care of this job position, he or she already asked for their peer, do you know someone to make this interview on the day, whatever. So
and the HR people are also protecting the company so that nobody can get a conversation, so that everybody can be treated, fairly, right? Treated the same.
Yeah. And the question that I usually to ask on this professional too, it's about the activity on their company, how the activities goes on, the main challenges, the main opportunities, and make this question for a lot of professionals of different companies, make you have a great pool of information of this activity, of this kind of process that you are interested on the market. So when you are in front of the interviewer, you have a great package of information to say on that moment, how you see the market on this activity, and how you can help the company.
Exactly. Even if you're 22 years old and just graduating from university, imagine how the interview would go if you've got intelligent observations to share with the employer, rather than just sitting there while they ask you, what was the most challenging thing that happened, in college? Or why do you want to be a marketing person? But if you could actually intelligently articulate the problems that many companies face, and situations where you've dealt even in college with problems like that, it just makes it for the interview to be more of a conversation than, questions and answers, right?
Great. Let me ask you about the conversation, the next steps. How can our audience can conduct the conversation? Okay, I made this first conversation. I make some great questions. How can I close these conversations, but making a open door for the next one? Do you have some tips?
Yeah, that's a perfect question. So usually I tell people they should ask for a 20-minute conversation. And after about 17 or 18 minutes, tell the person that you're talking with that that the conversation is going to end in a few minutes. But let me ask you a few things. Number one, this has been great information that you've shared with me. You've given me a lot to think about. Would it be okay if in 2 weeks I called you back to share with you what I've learned, and I'm sure I'll have other questions by then? Of course, the person's going to say, yes, please do so. The other thing to ask before you leave is, again, this has been very helpful. Can you think of 2 or 3 other of your colleagues that I might have a similar conversation that you might feel comfortable introducing me to. And so now your network can expand more, and you have permission to call them back in a few weeks to keep that friendship, that relationship building. And then maybe after the second call, they're not going to want to talk many more times, but you could follow up every 2 weeks with an interesting article you found on the internet about their company, about the industry, about their favorite football team. You know, something to keep your name in front of them.
And I make these conversations. When can I send the resume? Especially when there is no job positions, it's open. But I want to work on that company. How can I conduct?
It's a great question. I recommend that somebody never sends a resume unless someone asks for it, because you're a nice man. I like you, but if you sent me your resume, I didn't ask for it, I'm probably not even going to look at it. So it doesn't do you any good. But if you're having these conversations, when you ask the person for a conversation with an email or a message on LinkedIn, the person's either going to look at your LinkedIn profile, or they may ask you for a resume. Well, certainly then you could send that to them, a curriculum, a resume. But many people lose. I think somebody should have control of where their resume is. And I'm sure it's the same in Brazil. In the United States, there are many recruiting companies, headhunters, that are not particularly honest. And we don't have time to talk about all the different things that are bad that can happen when somebody has your resume that you don't want them to have it. So I would never send my resume to somebody that hasn't asked for it. And even if they ask for it, you know, don't be real excited that they ask for it. You need to understand, what are they going to do with it? Why do they want it? And it's here, and I'm sure there, it's very unusual that when a recruiter is looking for a new employee, they're not going through, most of them are not going through those resume piles. They're looking on LinkedIn as their first step, because almost everybody has a LinkedIn profile.
Yeah. And let me come back a little on the point of having a strong LinkedIn profile. What's your opinion about making content on LinkedIn, writing an article and sharing posts? I particularly see this point on my own career. I have a before I do that and after I do that. I started working with lean management at Itaú. It's a huge bank here in Brazil. And we started to working with a consultant agency, Lean Institute, Brazil. And this work is going so well that we decided to make an article together. I was a co-author of this article to documentate and share the application of our work on lean management at banking. That's a new thing on banking, in a general way. And when when we finish, when we publish and all this stuff, the volume of other professionals in lean management, other students that was looking for articles and things like that, started to get in touch with me, to have conversations and things like that. So for me, it was so important participating on this article, and I have already starting to make some little texts on LinkedIn, and also I started on inside the company. We have some communication system inside our company, and I started to make some tests on lean topics and for share our ideas inside the company. And then I decided to put some of these on LinkedIn and then come up the article. And this is so important. I discovered a passion for writing, because I never have writing this kind of stuff. And then I share with our audience the importance of put your ideas on the internet and put your opinion and connect with some article and things like that. So important. I'd like to hear from you. What's your vision about making content on the LinkedIn or any other platform?
Well, I'll give you an example of what I do. I'm not looking for a job, but it's the same process for looking for consulting projects. So every day, Monday through Friday, I post something that I find on the internet, an article from a magazine, for example, and then I add my comments, maybe 3 or 4 sentences of comments about why you should read the article, why it's interesting. And in my experience, almost nobody opens the article. But that's not the point. The point is, every day somebody sees that every day I'm trying to be helpful in putting information, not always about what I do, but what the people I want to work with, what's interesting to them. So where I do lean, like you do, lean manufacturing and process improvement, the executives that I want as my clients, they could be interested in that, but they could be interested in recruiting, retaining employees, security, cybersecurity, COVID protection, and things like that. I personally don't think it's worth writing long articles on LinkedIn or even long posts, because in my experience, again, a short post that's interesting, just a couple of paragraphs, usually gets a lot more views. And if you're looking for exposure,
the longer one.
Than a longer one, because everybody has so much information they have to go through every day. They don't want to read another article. So I think it's kind of a waste of time, unless you have a group that's very interested in seeing that information. I run a group myself on LinkedIn, but I post all the articles there and get very little engagement from people. But they see that I'm posting every day, and that's a lot of the objective there. The other advice about posting is, in the last few years, LinkedIn in particular, which is where most business people are looking for this information, went from a business platform meant for people to find jobs and companies to look for employees and consultants to find work, to now it's becoming more and more like Facebook. And so many people suggest that you reveal a little bit about yourself. What are your interests? What are your weaknesses and frustrations? I personally don't think that that's a wonderful idea, but a lot of people have success doing that. But certainly if you do put information like that on the personal type information, you ought to make sure that it's not very controversial, and it's something that you want to be known for talking about. So, if you're a manufacturing person, maybe you're not the best authority to talk about COVID, right? Or, with what's going on in the United States right now with, the racism protests and the Black Lives Matter movement and all that. If you're not somebody that's really knowledgeable about that, it can be pretty dangerous to put your opinion on, and you could hurt yourself. Whereas especially if you're trying to find a job, I think it's better to maybe expose a little bit of your personality, but in a very professional way and not being controversial.
Great. Dave, let me ask you a little question, more open about the young professional. What skill or competence do you like it's most important, or it's good for the younger ones to spend time and energy to develop and on the early years of their career?
So of course that varies between the types of jobs and careers they want, but I think something useful in any type of job would be a basic understanding of finance and accounting. How does a company make money? So if you're in sales, you can understand why a higher price is better for the company, and cutting the price, reducing the price just to get the order may not be a good thing. An engineer needs to know about finance and accounting because he's given projects that he needs to do, and he needs to know how to keep track of the costs and what are the important metrics involved in the project. Even HR people, when they're trying to set salary expectations and do strategic planning for the coming year, finance and accounting knowledge is crucial. Sales, basic knowledge about sales for any job. You're doing sales when you're looking for a job for yourself, even if you're not a salesperson. You're doing sales when you're trying to stand in front of the executives in your company and trying to sell a project to them. You may not be in sales, but they need to approve what you're doing. So basic understanding of what motivates people, why do they buy things? I think those would be two really good areas to focus on.
Great. And one more question about the younger ones, about leadership. How do you see leadership, especially for the people who are not in charge or in a role of leading others? The younger one just came up to the company. How can this younger professional, this intern, can be a leader of his activities?
Well, that's the key. He can be a leader of his activities without having a leadership position. So here, it's important to have a little bit of education. Number one, that mentor that we talked about a few minutes ago, to help them. And it's probably an area that reading books can really help. There's a lot of really good books on leadership. You're not going to learn to be a leader only from a book, but if you understand the basic concepts of what successful leaders have employed, when you're exposed to those situations, you have at least some knowledge to rely on when you make those decisions. But somebody that's what I call an individual contributor, he has no employees, he's working on a team. Even if he's not the team leader, he can be doing leadership things. And that those would be things like they need somebody to volunteer, raise their hand, that I will do that activity. If you want to be a leader, you should be the first one raising your hand, setting an example for the other people, and then not only volunteering to do it, but making sure that you do it on time, you do it for the right amount of money, and then you have to let people know in a modest way of what you accomplished. And I think if you have those experiences in any job that you have, you can become qualified for what I know every young person wants. They want to be a manager or a director by the time they're 25 years old. I don't know if that's going to happen, but it will certainly put them ahead of people competing with them if they continually volunteer for those opportunities to be helpful.
Great. One last question before we close, about the future of work. What advice can you share with us, especially for the younger ones again, for the future of work?
So we're now living in the United States, at least, and I'm sure it's in Brazil also, we call the gig economy. A gig is like a contract work, maybe a couple weeks or a couple months. And because a young person is going to expect to be changing jobs so many times, they need to be able to develop the skills early on if they can't find a job to be able to get themselves these temporary assignments. And so it's the same types of skills in job searching. Understand the value that you bring to an employer, how to express it from your mouth and in words, written words, how to be more self-sufficient. If you're a contractor, you don't have a boss, a manager that's always looking over you to make sure you're doing the work. How can you learn how to be responsible and organized to make sure you get the work done quickly? How to ask for referrals when you have a successful project so that you can show those references to the next potential company that you want to work for. To learn how to learn very quickly when you come into a new situation. How can I learn this technology? How can I learn how people do things in a very short period of time so that I can start contributing very quickly?
Great. So then my last question, what advice would you give yourself when you started your own career?
Well, again, my advice was a lot different because I was expecting to stay at the same company for 40 years. We didn't have so much contract work and consulting work. And so what I wanted to, I started off in a training program that lasted about 2 years. And so in those days, when I chose my first job, because it was a lot easier to find a job back then than it is for young people today, there was a very defined path. 2 years I would be in this job and 2 years in this job. And maybe after 10 years, all in the same company, I would have my first management job. So I wanted to have a lot of experiences across different departments to do that. But again, today, the advice would be much different because of the duration of each job, the expectation.
So let's say today, what advice can you share with the younger ones today?
Well, again, I think the importance of relationships with other people, I can't stress that enough. There are famous books about how Dale Carnegie, for example, was a famous American author, How to Win Friends and Influence People.
Amazing book.
The book was written in the 1950s, but it's still very applicable today.
Amazing book.
A lot of people think that if they're smart and they are very proficient at their job, that's enough. But they're leaving out the fact that in order to be successful in a company, you need to understand people. What motivates them? How can you get people, persuade them to do the things that you want to do? What can you do to help other people? So it's no longer enough to have good technical skills in IT or engineering or finance. You've got to be really good at people also.
Great. So let's go in Portuguese from now. Dave, muito obrigado por participar com a gente. Foi muito legal ter essa conversa com você. Foi muito rico. Não tenho dúvidas que vai ser de grande ajuda para a nossa audiência aqui. E mais uma vez, muito obrigado.
Obrigado você, e foi prazer te conhecer e conversar contigo. Eu tenho o perfil de LinkedIn, Dave Boss, de Atlanta, Georgia, e seu público, sua audiência, pode conectar no LinkedIn comigo. E se eu posso ajudar uma pessoa com conselhos, vou tentar, tenho a vontade.
Muito bom. Eu vou botar todos os links na descrição do vídeo aqui para vocês acompanharem. Sigam o Dave. Eu vou colocar tudo aí para facilitar para vocês. E Dave, mais uma vez, muito obrigado e até a próxima.
E mais uma vez, para mim, o público, você precisa falar no inglês, que eu falo muito bem no português.
So Dave, thanks a lot for joining us today. Your Portuguese is so good. Thank you for sharing all your ideas and your experience, amazing experience. And thank you for getting in touch with us. It was a big pleasure to receive you here. Thanks
again, Victor. Have a nice evening and stay safe.
You too. See you next time. Bye-bye.
Okay. Bye-bye.